Okay, thank you everybody for joining us. As I mentioned just previously, as we were talking, today is right now actually, since in Jewish calendar things work with the night and not with the day. So it is actually Yom HaZikaron right now. And being that it's Yom HaZikaron, I just want, let's just all take, we're not going to do a full minute, but let's just take just a couple of seconds and reflect internally for a minute for all the Israeli soldiers and all the people that have sacrificed their life in the current country and in the past to be able to settle in the land of Israel, to remember them. So let's just take just a couple of seconds to reflect internally. Okay, so I just I wanna talk about the concept that Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, right, work simultaneously, and it's a fascinating thing. It's fascinating, right, how you got the two things working together, right, and it's something that the commentaries speak about. The commentaries speak about this, why is it that they created that you have the remembrance of all the Israeli soldiers, right? And then you got the remembrance of, then you got the Yom HaAtzmaut. You got remembering of all the great nation and celebration. Right? What's with the two things working simultaneously? That's that the commentaries want to know. I mean, say now, like what was the thought behind it? There's deep thought behind this of why it's done in a certain way, and the question is why? Why is it done in this direction? Right? Why? And this is something that we see in Judaism numerous times. We spoke about this a little bit over Pesach, right? That we see that we have a concept of a celebration going out of Egypt. But during the celebration, we speak about the beginning, we start off with the slavery. We speak about all the hardship, the difficulty that was going on. And then we go to the celebration. So we see this, it's not a new thing. Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut is a relatively new thing, 70 years, right? But we see this in Jewish thought, and I'm sure that's where they developed this and they thought about this. So what's the connection in between the two? I want to talk about that for a minute. And what I want to talk about primarily will take from this idea as I advertise a class, right? I want to talk about primarily of what is the idea of Israel being an opportunity. What is it that we're so connected to the land of Israel? Yes, it's our homeland. Yes, Am Yisrael Chai, right? And we have the Temple Mount. But what is it in the land of Israel that connects us so much to it? I want to talk about that also. Let's first answer the first question, and then we'll move on to the other question, and hopefully we'll get a better understanding of what Israel really means, Eretz Yisrael. What does it really mean? And what does it mean to us as a nation? And what are we truly supposed to get out of it? Right? And really develop internally inside of ourselves. That's the goal for today's class. And as always, there's questions afterwards. So please, if you have any questions, feel free, write it down if you don't want to forget. Right? And we'll take questions afterwards. So the commentaries say something very powerful. The commentaries, people, not commentaries as rabbis, right, but people. And I want to bring it out from a story that happened to me. It happened to me. 2 years ago, I had the privilege of going to Israel, right? Or 3 years ago. I had the privilege of going to Israel, and we went, I take the men's trip to Israel. I take it almost every year, and we, every time we go to an army base. That year, we went to an army base up north on the border of Syria, right? Literally on the border of Syria. There's a tank base over there. And we ate supper with them. It was very nice. And then they went and he gave a nice talk. And where did he give the talk? We walked out of the dining room and we went into this empty field. And on one side of the field, there was this memorial for all the Israeli soldiers that were killed during the wars, defending, first of all, conquering the Golan Heights, and then defending the Golan Heights during the Second War. And then on the opposite side of that memorial, there's a concert hall. A concert hall. And then in that concert hall, that's where he gave us a talk, right? And we did some beautiful things and exercises with the Israeli soldiers. And he went ahead and he said, you're probably wondering, what's going on over here? On one side, you got a memorial. On the other side, you got a concert hall. What's with this? Why do you have that? And he said something very striking and never left me. And this is rooted in Jewish thought and rooted in Jewish history. He said, when we have difficulties, when we remember, the idea of remembering is not to live in the past. The idea of remembrance is not to get depressed, God forbid. The idea of remembrance is to say, look, they have sacrificed so we could live, that we can move on, that we could have a concert, that we could have a Kotel Amaravi, that we could pray at, that we could have study halls in East Jerusalem, and we could have study halls in West Jerusalem, and we could have soccer games, that we could live. That's how we celebrate their lives. And that was the same thing we spoke about right before, during Passover. Same idea. We have to remember the slavery to be able to say, let's live properly. This is a very important idea, a very important point in human nature, and especially during the difficulties that we're going now. Each one of us is affected differently. Hopefully we're not affected too much, but unfortunately there are people that are affected extremely hard. What is this idea of being able to live through difficulties, overcoming challenges? How do we do it? How do we make sure that we become better and stronger and create a growth opportunity from every situation that we're in? The idea, the concept is to be able to realize that there's always what to learn, what to gain from every situation that you're in. There is never a situation that you can't grow from. Some situations are so hard, some situations are so difficult, we might not see it. We need help, or we can't at that point of time. But there is something to grow from. There is something to learn from. And therefore, when they created Yom HaZikaron and then Yom HaAtzmaut, they created it one day after. They created it for this idea that we go ahead and we remember. We go ahead and we cry. We go ahead and we have a siren and we say Psalms and we say Kaddish. And we learn chapters of Talmud and Mishnah in their memory. We do extra mitzvot, extra good deeds and tzedakah for their memories. But then we go ahead and we live for their memory. We go ahead and we celebrate the creation of the state of Israel. Israel's been a Jewish nation for many years. It's always been a Jewish nation since the Jewish people came into the land of Israel, all the way from Abraham. We go ahead and we celebrate it. We go ahead and we say, we remembered you, and we cried, and we said Psalms, and we learned, and now we're going to go ahead and celebrate, and we're going to remember, and you're going to live on through us, through the actions that we do, through living, through making sure that we live in the country, through making sure that we live on. And this is a lesson in every person's life. Any situation that you're in. I was talking to someone the other day, unfortunately, he had a death in the family. It was very difficult. And I can't imagine. I'm not even pretending to imagine. But how do we make sure that we make an opportunity out of it? We go ahead and we make sure that we're living and we're creating more life and a better world in their memory because of what they accomplished in the world. That's what it means that they're living through us. And therefore, this idea of the two things next to each other is so powerful, and it's rooted in Jewish thought. So that's one important lesson to remember. That the whole essence of Israel, of Eretz Yisrael, the whole essence of the Jewish people is to always find the opportunity of growth from every situation that you're in. From any situation that you're in, there's an opportunity of growth. Wherever you are, whatever happens to you. We can't see it. Sometimes it's a small thing, sometimes it's a big thing. I've mentioned this in the past. I'm just going to mention very quickly. It's a very small thing. Before I met Devorah, my wife, I had a broken engagement. I was engaged to someone else beforehand. And the engagement was broken less than a week before the wedding. It was very hard. Right? I would admit it on social media. I wet my pillow. It was hard. Difficulty. Very difficult. Thank God. It was, of course, all for the best. I met Devorah afterwards. Wonderful, wonderful family. But I was trying to figure out, what am I supposed to learn out of this? A couple months later, I was studying. I haven't met Devorah yet. I was still single. And I got a phone call from a friend of mine saying, hey, I have a buddy who just had a broken engagement. And I was wondering if you could talk to him. He's taking it really hard. I don't know what to tell him. I don't know what to say. I was wondering if you could talk to him. I said, I'd be more than happy to. Of course. Right then and there, I realized there was something for me opportunity of growth from the situation that happened to me. It's a small little thing. But every situation is an opportunity of growth. We have to take what happened, live through it, have the pain. There is pain. We mourn for death, and we say psalms for the sick. There's, of course, this pain, and it's not taking away from the pain. But afterwards, we have to grow. That's the Jewish people. That's what Eretz Yisrael represents. That's what the land of Israel represents. Growing from the situation. So now let's move on to the next point, and we'll bring this back into the fold. So what's with the land of Israel? Eretz Yisrael. It's not, let's be honest, its beaches are nice. I've been to some of the beaches, right? Its beaches are nice, but there's nicer beaches in the world. Their mountains are good, but there's not nicer mountains in the world. Okay, snorkeling in a lot is pretty cool, right? But there's better snorkeling in the world. That's pretty high up. Right? Yes, they have phenomenal falafel, but wherever the Jewish people would be, there'll be phenomenal falafel. So what's with Eretz Yisrael? What's with this idea? We're driven towards it, right? We have a yearning for it. I lived there for many years, and when we came back to move back to America, right? I remember we were first living in Kansas, and then we came to Jacksonville, and I wasn't there for 2.5 years, and I had a yearning to go back, and thank God I had the opportunity to go back, and thank God I have had the opportunity the last couple of years to go back. There's this drive, there's a yearning, it's in our blood. What's the connection? What's with it? And if you're going to tell me it's our homeland, it's our homeland, right? That's where Abraham was. That's where the Jewish people came in after they left Egypt. There have been many countries, many nations in the world throughout history that were exiled from their homeland. And maybe 100 years after, even 200 years afterwards, maybe they were trying to get back to the homeland. But afterwards, they integrated into the society, and then they forgot about their homeland. They got a new homeland. We've been over 2,000 years and we've been waiting to go back to our homeland. And thank God we've been able to. We've always considered it our homeland. There's no other concept like that in the universe, in the world, in history, where a nation is exiled and 2,000 years later, 100 years later, 150 years later, they're still trying to get back. You speak to people that America is made up of all the nations. People say, no, I want to go back to Berlin. I want to go back to Japan. I want to go back to England. I want to go back. They don't. They left and they moved on. What's with it that we're connected to it? And what's so special to it? Eretz Yisrael, land of Israel. So there's this unbelievable idea, and it's rooted in the concept of spirituality. Yes, the word spirituality. Do you know that of the 248 positive commandments, the 613 mitzvahs, there's 248 positive commandments. Of the 248 positive commandments, there's 130 that can only be kept in the land of Israel. Can you imagine? There's 130 that can only be kept in the land of Israel. What does that mean? 130 that could only be kept in the land of Israel? The laws of Shemitah, the laws of Meiser, right? The laws of sacrifices, and onwards. 1 second. Israel's a land. Yeah, it's our homeland. Mitzvahs is for us. It's for our benefit, right? It's for us to grow. So why is there a restriction of being able to do certain mitzvot if I'm not in the land of Israel? What does that mean? The same way, there's certain mitzvot that I can't do because I'm not a Kohen. And there's certain mitzvot that a Kohen can't do because he's not a Yisrael. Not going to get into that right now. But what's with the idea of land of Israel, Eretz Yisrael? To say the commentaries that the same way there's a concept of spirituality of a time, right? We spoke this morning and in the morning minute about Yom Kippur, in our morning minute. If anybody wants it, please send me a message. I'll send them to you. It's on my YouTube channel. Please check out my YouTube channel. Right? I have all the classes and things on there. Right? So please check it out if you're interested in reviewing or listening to some of the classes. Yom Kippur is the holiest day of the year. Right? Holiest day of the year. It's a time. There's spirituality in a time. We have a concept, spirituality in a place. Same way there's a spirituality in a time, Yom Kippur. We just had Passover. And we're going to have the holiday of Shavuot coming up. There's Shabbat every week. There's an extra special kind of spirituality during that period of time that we could connect to. God created, why did God create this? You got to take it up with him. I don't know. But God created that there's a place in the world that has more spirituality than anywhere else. The one could attain a higher level of spirituality than anywhere else. And that is Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. That is Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael has an intrinsic, it has the same way, there's certain places that have a more radioactive, right? There's certain places, the plates and things. So too, there's a spiritual force. There's a spiritual force, and that spiritual force is Eretz Yisrael has the highest energy of spirituality. And then in Eretz Yisrael, there's different places, right? There's Jerusalem that has the highest level. There's the Temple Mount that has more, and then the Holy of Holies that has the highest. And then there's other places. There's Hebron, and there's Tzfat. And other cities also have levels of spirituality, not as much as Jerusalem, but within the land of Israel. So the connection to Eretz Yisrael, to Israel, is its spiritual magnetic force that is attracting us. Whoever's been to the Kotel, right? and hasn't been there a little while, I can just talk for myself. I can talk about other people that have told me their experience. I can't tell you all out there. But a lot of people have mentioned this to me, and I myself have felt like this also, that I feel this magnetic force. I don't know. I feel like a tingling in my chest. I feel like a certain emotional, thing going on. I don't have words to describe it. Some people break down, crying, right? Some people, when they touch the wall, what is it? Some psychological? No. There's a magnetic energy, a spiritual magnetic energy that is attaching itself to our neshama, our soul. We have a soul. We are made up of a soul. Our essence of who we are is our neshama, our soul. Our body is just the clothing for the soul. The same way this tie and this shirt that I'm wearing is a clothing for my body. The neshama is the essence of who we are. And it's covered over by the physical. It's covered by the physical. And our job in this world is to connect to our spiritual. That's our job. Our job is to connect to the spiritual and become more spiritual. And to elevate ourselves and to remove the physical and make the physical more spiritual. That's our job. And God gave us different opportunities and different things to help us out. Like we spoke this morning, Yom Kippur is a boost. It's like Popeye's spinach. That's what Yom Kippur is. Like Popeye's spinach. It's a boost. It helps us out. But how do we become spiritual? It's the day-to-day. And there's certain places in the world that God gave us that also elevate us and give us a boost. And that's Eretz Yisrael. Land of Israel is a boost. And then Jerusalem's more. And then the Temple Mount is even more. That's why there was a mitzvah that everybody 3 times a year had to come up to Jerusalem. It didn't make a difference where they lived. It was a travel. Right? They couldn't hop on the new rail line that took you from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in, 45 minutes. Right? They couldn't hop on, the airlines that take you from south of Israel up north. They had to schlep and they had to go. And there's a mitzvah, Ola L'Regel, to go up to Jerusalem, even if you live in the land of Israel, because you have to connect to that spiritual energy, to wake up that soul and to make it shake a little bit, that the magnetic force is sort of shaking it and making us wake up a little bit. That's the essence of the land of Israel. That's the truth of what Eretz Yisrael represents. It's just like anything in the world. When you are affected by something for a long time, you lose your sensitivity a little bit. That's why we don't have Yom Kippur all year. And I'll talk about myself. When I lived in Israel, I lived there for almost 9 years, with a little break in between. And I remember, I try to go to the Kotel, to the Kotel every day. I didn't make it every day. Sometimes I did it a couple, 40, 50 days in a row, and then I had a break. But even when I kept on going, you start losing. I didn't get that goosebumps like I got the first time I went, because you start losing your sensitivity, even in a place that's so spiritual. Got to work on it. Got to make you realize what you have. You got to realize the potential of what you have. Therefore, there was a mitzvah to go 3 times a year. There's a Yom Kippur once a year. I'm just pointing that out. If someone says, oh, look, people are living in the land of Israel and they're not, because you lose that sensitivity. You have to work on it. You have to make sure that you don't lose that sensitivity. It's like the same way. I remember speaking to some friends, my Rosh Yeshiva, my head of my yeshiva, who passed away a couple of years ago, who married me and my wife, Devorah. Right? He was a genius. He was unbelievable. Right? But we were around him all the time. Of course, we showed him the utmost respect. But you kibitz a little bit, and right? Because I was with him every day. I studied with him. I went into his office. I schmoozed with him and talked to learning and other things. You lose your sensitivity a little bit. And that's the same thing with anything. Side point. Let's get back to our point. So that is the true energy of the land of Israel. The true energy of the land of Israel is this magnetic spiritual energy that is all over the land. Its headquarters, its base is Temple Mount. And as you get further away from it, it gets a little weaker. Now it makes so much sense why we never lost hope, why we're always yearning for the land of Israel. Because it's not just the homeland where we have memories of our great-grandparents. It's not just the homeland of when, we had a certain culture that gets swallowed up. But it's more than that. We are connected to it. Our neshama, our soul, is connected to it. On a spiritual energy level, we are connected. So as long as we have a neshama inside of ourselves, and it depends how strong it is, and we have to work on making it strong. And therefore, certain people that their neshama is not as strong, and certain people that neshama are stronger, and each one of us, we can't judge. We're all born into different levels. We all have to work on making our neshama stronger. But the stronger your neshama is, the greater that connection is. And that's the idea, right, of why the Jewish people have never stopped. They have never stopped, right, wanting to connect to the land of Israel. They've never stopped. Throughout history, you've had individuals, but as a nation, it is because we cannot stop. We're magnetically connected. And if we're magnetically connected, spiritually magnetically connected, we can't stop. It's just impossible. It's science, spiritual science. So that, my friends, right, is the idea of why we're still connecting to the land of Israel. And that's why there's a certain mitzvot that it can only be done in the land of Israel. It makes sense. Because the land of Israel has a special spiritual energy that one could attain a higher level. And when you can attain that higher level, that spiritual energy, right, so therefore there's more mitzvot that you could do there. The same way there's certain mitzvot that we only do on Yom Kippur that we can't do all year round. We could reach a certain level. We are able to reach a level of not eating, right, and not drinking, and being in synagogue all day. God willing, we will be. But there's an energy in the land of Israel. So now let's make a full circle. So now when we're trying to remember the land of Israel, when we're remembering Yom HaZikaron, right, and then we're moving into Yom HaAtzmaut, and we're remembering, and we're trying to make sure that we make sure that they are living on, and the land of Israel is moving on, and Am Yisrael, as we say, Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people are still alive. What do we have to make sure we do? We have to live. We have to have culture. We have to have medicine. But all that has to be to build up the infrastructure of the essence of what the land of Israel is. A spiritual beacon for the Jewish people. A homing device. It's like that homing device. Someone told me that they were going hiking with their dog. They were going up to the mountains in I think North Carolina or South Carolina, I don't remember, right? And so they put on a tracker on their dog, right? That they could always find their dog. Put on the collar, put a tracker. The land of Israel is our homing device. It's our tracker. It's our homing device. It's a beacon. That's what it is, and therefore that's why we're attracted to it. That's why we want to go there. Sometimes we can't even imagine. We don't know. Right? It could be people that are so far removed from their Judaism, but they have that yearning. They have the love for the land of Israel. It's their soul connecting to it. So if we want to make sure that we truly remember the Israeli soldiers and all the people that have sacrificed their lives to make sure that we're able to live in the land of Israel, from the first Aliyah, from the second Aliyah, throughout history, people that have made sure that there was still a presence in the land of Israel. People that unfortunately were killed by terrorists. I was in Har Herzl this past trip. There's a section for people that were killed by terrorists. They sacrificed their lives to live in the land of Israel. We have to remember them too. Now, how do we make sure we remember them properly? Yes, we celebrate. And yes, we say Kaddish. And we light a candle. But we have to make sure that we live, that they are living through us. To make sure that that we make the land of Israel stronger, because the more people come, there's more aliyot. There's more people moving to the land of Israel. There's a mitzvah called Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. There's a mitzvah that's called living in the land of Israel. And ask me why I'm not living there? Ask my rabbi. There's reasons. There's reasons why not to live there. But you have to think about it. You have to have a discussion. We talked about it. We had reasons. But there's a mitzvah. So as we move forward in these 2 days, today, remembering all those that have fallen, and the following day, remembering the living, let's make sure that we connect to these 2 ideas that we spoke about today. Number one, making sure that we are living, making sure that we find an opportunity of growth from everything that happens. Make sure that we find an opportunity of growth from the land of Israel. Make sure we find an opportunity of growth from their sacrifices. All these kadoshim, these holy ones that have sacrificed their lives. How do we do that? We do it by living. How we live by connecting to the essence of the land of Israel. Yes, making sure that we are the best in medicine, and we have a strong army, and we have a sign, and we have apps. But it all has to be connected to the nucleus. The nucleus is Torah, mitzvot, spirituality. Connecting ourselves to our Father in heaven. Making sure that we reconnect and we get rejuvenated. We drink that spinach like Popeye, and we get stronger spiritually. We connect to that energy. And God willing, speedily in our days, Mashiach will come. We'll all be living in the land of Israel. And a reign of tranquility and spirituality, and with the recognition of God. Wishing everyone a good evening, a good day of remembrance, and for Wednesday, a happy Yom Ha'atzmaut. Let's take these 2 wonderful days and reflect internally and grow through it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.